let us take a look the hand layup process. Okay. Okay, if you take a look on the hand layout process, okay, the dry fab, we have two types, okay, the top part and the bottom part here. The top part is basically the typical dry fabric, whereby it does not have resin comes with it. Okay, the bottom one, wet fabric, we also known, the bottom one, okay, wet fabric ataupun pre-preg, which is, if you, why I have one is big, one is small, because these processes for dry fabric, okay, it is mostly used, okay. And if you take a look, the processes coming from dry fabric goes to the layup process, whether wet layup ataupun hand layup. We call it wet layup or hand layup, and then open curing ataupun baking processes, and also room temperature curing for ataupun temperature assisted curing, means that you need to use apa ni, macam heater, oven, autoclave, whatsoever. Okay, for wet fabric ataupun pre-preg, okay, the processes is known as dry layup. Okay, and then it's going to have high pressure ataupun you need to use vacuum. The processes are going to use autoclave, heat lamp, oven ataupun hot bonder. Now, use why I use different blocks. Okay, one is square, one is, you can see macam arrow. Okay, usually for wet fabric is control from the beginning. And then for fabric, what happens is that the processes are in terms of blocks. Okay, so each of these process you need to do more inspection, more inspection, more inspection, just to ensure that your parts are actually apa tu? There will be that you can controls the error. So that's why you need to keep monitoring when you are using these processes. Okay, the top part here, okay, where you can see the brush, okay, and then you can see this person using a glove, and also here you see the what do you call that, the a beaker, okay, with a resin inside. Okay, this is how we define the wet layout. Okay, you have to use brushes, and then you need to wet up the fiber, okay, on all surfaces, okay, and also by pushing the resin, by applying the resin to the fibers. Whereby for wet fabric ataupun pre-pack, you just need to cut it into shape, and then, okay, for the red part here is basically what we call a parting film. Okay, parting film is actually a layer to separate it between the two plies. Okay, the actual ply, just like a double-sided tape. Okay, you have the tape side and also the apa ni, the white parting film. Whenever that you want to do it as a, whenever that you want to use it as a double-sided, you just put one side on the surface, and then you pull out the tape on the other side, so that you can have both sided to be apa ni, sticky. Okay, the take apa ni, the thickness comes from the both sides. Okay, so similarly with this, once you want to stack up, then you have to remove this red cutting film. Okay, so very easy, you do not have to mix resin. Okay, coming out from the roll, and then you just need to cut into shape, and then you can start lay up by pushing ataupun by using a roller here. Okay, advantages, okay, for hand layup, both side, either wet layup ataupun dry layup. Advantages: minimum setup, very economical, possibility you can have a complex shape, because when you do manual layup, okay, you can push your fibers to maybe go to the crevices, maybe go to the certain radius, so that for you to ensure that everything's being covered, okay, on the mold. Disadvantages: okay, usually, let's say for the high capital investment, especially when you are using autoclave for the dry layup, slow manufacturing process for the manual one, lah, right? Okay, and then also consumable costs are very high. Okay, because what are the consumable costs? The brush you need to replace every time you use it. The beaker you need to replace every time you use it. Okay, and then you need to have maybe masking tape. This one is the glove. Okay, because you need to consistently ataupun continuously replacing whenever that you want to do whenever that you want to lay up. Okay, but that is only when the health is concerned. But some of the companies, they don't bother. They just give a pair of glove, and then you have to use it for one day. Okay, so every time you want to go for it, then you have to take it out, and then you're going to use the same thing after you finish your lunch, and then when you want to continue your work. Okay, but it's not very hygiene in that case. Right, so how does it done? Okay, you have fabrics, you have resin that you need to mix, you put them together, and then you do the layup. Okay, now if you stop at this process, what happens is that we call it a open mold. Yeah, open mold curing. Okay, you do not do anything after you do the layup. However, if you put plastic bag, breather, okay, if you have additional parts here, and then you do the vacuum, this is what we call a closed mold process, right? So these are the two differences, whether you're going to do open mold like this, or you're going to do the closed mold like this, right? Now if you are using closed mold, what are the material that we are using? Okay, you have the parts, okay, you have the peel ply, you have the release film, you have the breather, you have the vacuum bag. So these, and also sealant tape, these are what we call the consumable materials, whereby it's only can be used only one time. All right. And then you have the pump, okay, and also a vacuum gauge. Okay. Let us see. So this is the processes. You do the mold, okay, and then you do the fabric layup. There you saturate the resin with the saturate the resin to the fibers, right? And then you spread the resin. Once you have spread the resin, everything's wetted. There you need to do the bagging preparation. Okay, this is the vacuum pot. One goes for the vacuum gauge, vacuum line, and then after that you're going to do this. Okay, you're going to do the vacuum bagging. You need to have the release fabric ataupun ply. You need to have the breather. You need to have the vacuum bag. You have the sealant tape all around, just to ensure that when you do the vacuum is trapped, okay, within this vacuum bagging, right? Um, do you record this class?
Record saya.
Okay, okay, okay. All right. Okay. This is a sample of vacuum bagging processes. Okay. You can have a flat surface. You can have a round shape like this. Okay. After you do the apa ni layup. Okay. So this is typical vacuum bag. Filament winding. Okay, nampak dia pakai mandrel bulat. Okay, let's say that you have a concave or this is a convex shape. Okay, what does it mean is that you have internally apa ni parts that apa ni you have a call it female parts. Okay, where you have a slot inside. Okay, slot. And also if you have an extruded part, okay, you can also do. Okay, and then let's say that if you're having this one is another process, not vacuum bagging, vacuum infusion, also the same thing. Okay, we can do this. However, you all of this, if you take a look, your your vacuum bag are been stretched so that you can see that it is very tight. In terms of the vacuum, there's no vacuum escape. You can have a very tight area here, and the temp and the pressure that you need to attain is about 22-inch mercury ataupun 10 psi. Okay. Now you need to ensure that you have the vacuum. Okay. If you are doing, and then it is a fault that you are doing pressurized. Okay. Because remember, kalau kita dalam workshop, kita ada pneumatic lines, and that pneumatic lines tu usually it pushes out air. Vacuum line, the pneumatic air is being sunk in. Okay, so that is the two different things. Okay, but if you put it wrongly, then you're going to have something like this. Okay, instead of it being compress, stretch, and you trap the air. So now you are introducing your air. So if there is something like this happen, what you need to do is that you need to open back your bagging, okay, and then you need to check your layup. If the layup has been separated because of the pressure that you introduce, then you have to redo it back again. Okay, so this is why I said when we are doing manual, so we never know what happens. Okay, sometimes you can get this vacuum pot clog. Okay, and then it can't use the vacuum. Okay, so eventually you just take it, any pneumatic line, just put in, and then when you put it, then it's become like this. Okay, it's going to be very dangerous, and also what happened is that you just wasted your parts, right? Just a bit of simulation. Okay, how does the process looks like? Okay, so you have your parts, and then you do the layup. Okay, put another part, you do the layup. Put another part, you do another layup. Okay, and then you do the final layup. Okay, then it becomes part like this. So if you let the part secured as per this is what we call the open mold concept. But after you have your parts, okay, you put, okay, this is your part, okay, and then you put your sealant tape around, okay, and then you put your peel ply, you put your breather, you put your all the parts layer, okay, and then the vacuum bag, okay, the vacuum port and vacuum line. This is a closed mold, okay. So this closed mold here, you need to have a vacuum, and then you need to have this gauge here. All right, okay. So what are the material that you are using? Okay, just now I told you we have to use release film, breather, vacuum bagging. So these are the processes. All right. Okay. This you need to remember. Okay, because it will be coming up in your examination. It will be coming up in your projects and also your final as well, midterm as well. Okay. So you have the mold. Okay, you have the parts that you laminated. Okay, the black part here. So you remember on the animation we have the sealant tape seals the back to the mold. Okay, this is the purpose. And then you have the release film, which retains more resin on the laminated surface, but it's optional, right? So usually release film and release peel ply, it is the purpose is to provide an easy release barrier between the laminate surface and the breather and bleeder. Okay, so it's going to be a separate. Sorry, the function is to separate between the adjacent ply, what we call a breather here. Okay, with the laminate. Without having this release ply, what happens is that once the resin cured, this breather here can bonded to your parts, and that is going to be a very time consuming for you to remove it because you only want to have the cured part here. Okay, what does the breather use is to traps and holds the excess resin from the laminate. Okay, now breather here is basically like a sponge. Okay, whether there is an excess resin, it will absorb. Okay, the absorption is actually to control not so much resin on your parts. Okay, and once it is cured, this needs to be thrown out. It is not going to be part of your component. Okay, and then the vacuum bag, okay, airtight seal placed over the sealant tape, applies vacuum pressure over the entire laminate. So it traps the vacuum. But you need to properly ensure that uh, the surface of the sealant tape, okay, covers by the vacuum bagging. Excuse me. So without that, okay, you're going to have an air escape. So you do not have any vacuum. So whenever that you do not have any vacuum, then you're going to have apa ni, higher void strap in between the laminate. And then you have the vacuum connectors, which is can connect to your vacuum gauge to monitor your vacuum, or you can also connect it to the apa tu vacuum pump as well. Okay, in this case here, they use one construction, it's not one configuration, whereby the vacuum port, okay, you put the vacuum gauge in between the pump and also the vacuum connectors. Okay, now usually because we are doing well up, usually what happens is that if you are not careful enough, and there are few incidences whereby if the student do it on their own without having any lecturers ataupun the technicians to oversee the processes, okay, you might put your vacuum pump here, sorry, the vacuum connectors to the places where resin can enter your vacuum pot. Once the resin entered the vacuum pot, and then when the vacuum pot gets clogged, okay, and then the resin cured, so it will prevent the vacuum process. Okay, so sometimes if you attach with a silencer ataupun air venturi, so it's become a pressurized. So this is what one of the apa ni cautions lah, okay, to ensure that when you do your baking later on, uh, the initial cycle, okay, ataupun the initial process after the baking, you have to ensure, and then you need to take a precaution measure just to ensure that your resin does not have the opportunity to go ataupun seep to the vacuum pot. Okay, so if it's seeping to the vacuum pot, then that's it lah. You need to repair your vacuum pot. And usually immediate they do not repair it, they just put it away. Uh, but actually we can do the some servicing and also some repair. Okay. Now that is the wet vacuum bagging system. There's another processes where we call a reusable bagging system. Instead of using bagging material, a mix of silicone materials are poured into the mold, cured following the mold shape. Once the fabricated items are soaked with the resin, the silicone bag is placed on the part. So what does it mean is that, remember we have this, okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 items, okay, that we are not going to use it as part of the components. Once you use it, okay, once you finish, then you just throw it away. Okay, we are not going to do that. Okay, basically what we're going to do is that, okay, we're going to have this, okay, we're going to replace this with a silicone bag. Okay, so this guy here apa tu, using the silicone bag, and it is a reusable. Okay, so it is not going to be once off usage. Okay, after you finish, then you can reuse it back again, and then for several times. Okay, so and then another thing is that you can do for integrated parts. Okay, means that from various mold, okay, to make a components, then you can only make one component. This is a seat of apa ni dekat for the MRT, okay, MRT system. Okay, so if you take a look, they need to put one pieces by one pieces if they do it manually ataupun hand lay up. But after they change into the silicone bagging, okay, so they can have integrated parts, okay, whereby it's going to be easy for them to use it. Advantages: reduce the consumable, shorter preparation time,